There's another episode of Mr. Allard's Neighborhood. This is the place where you're entitled to Brad's opinion. And now for your host, Brad Allard.
Hello, Burleson. Another great day, another hot day. At least it's a little bit cloudy. Is it cloudy where you're at, Taylor?
Yeah, it actually rained a little bit.
Yeah, mine misted. I don't know if you call it rain. It barely even got the concrete wet, if that. So,
oh man,
yeah, I know it is what it is. I was talking to my cousin up in Oklahoma, and they gotten almost a month's worth of rain in a 3-day period.
wow.
Yeah, up there, and so there you go. Just happens to be the right location. So today we were going to talk with Jennifer Woods about Harvest House and the Little Red Schoolhouse event that's coming up. But unfortunately, she had a death in the family. So we're improvising, and we'll have her on when it fits her schedule, when she's taking care of everything she needs to be. So that may be a little while. So God bless you, Jennifer. We're thinking about you, and we're sorry about your bad news, to say the least. Anyway, today we're going to talk about the primaries. And also I'm going to talk about, on a side note, since I'm talking about political candidates, I'm talking about what's been coming out in the news in many different places in the last week or so about this granddaughter that Joe Biden will not acknowledge and has publicly not acknowledged her. And now that people are now getting to the point, even in the mainstream media, that they're noticing this to be an issue. And I to be honest with you, it's going to take a lot of tact on my part and a lot of restraint, not to say what I really think about it, because to me, it's despicable what's going on. Come on, phone. There you go. Anyway, we also talk about, I'm just going to review the primaries. One of my very first podcasts I did way back in the day, 4 years ago, was when I did the Democrats, who at the time had like 19 or 20 candidates. Republicans haven't gotten quite to that degree yet, but they're getting there. And I'm just going to go over what I see in the Republican primaries and just some general comments about it, because to me, it's like the country realizes we're heading for a political disaster, yet there's nothing we can do about it. I'm reading articles over and over again about how the vast majorities of the American people do not want this upcoming election to be between Biden and Trump, but that's what we're seeing to be almost destined to have. But we'll go over that in a minute. Let's talk about the sponsors and then get right to the fun stuff. Thank you, CrossFit Burleson, over in 317 Southwest Wilshire. Thank you, ladies, Lexi and Bailey. They got some plans and ideas. They've been owners now for about 2 months. If you want to hear what they have to say, about a month ago, I had them on the podcast, and they talked about some of the plans they had and some of their experiences in dealing with this. So we'll look forward to that. Also, thank you, Shandy, over at Shandy Stogsteel Group. She handles all the real estate for you. It's really great because I don't know anything about real estate, and I didn't know anything about real estate, and she was able to walk us through the sale of my daughter's house, and so it really helped out a bunch to have somebody that knows what they're talking about. So, Shandy, thank you for your help. Also, Our Place of Course. Everybody knows auto. Everybody loves auto. It's on the highway in Ellsbury. Great food, great staff, and great service. It's a really good place to go. Also, Wild Cigar and Culture, another really good place to go. Have yourself a drink, have yourself a decent smoke, have yourself a little time to think or to have a conversation without having to shout. You can have business there in their conference room. So check out Chris over at the Standard at Wild Cigar and Culture. Also, Tiffany Nico, who's, hang on, a lot of dust today. There we go. Yeah, a lot of dust around here. It's kicked out the dust a little. Anyway, Local Life magazine is out. Local Life TX is always up. So look at locallifetx.com if you want to know what's current, but also you could find this magazine not just at 30,000 homes across the area, but in several businesses like Autos, for example, has it. So thank you, Tiffany, for what you do for the community. Also, thank you to Gala. They're downstairs now. I haven't been there because they've had a lot of tourists, let's say. My wife says they're really, really busy. And so maybe I'll wait until a time where it's not quite so busy. But anyway, Southern Gym, first floor of the Windmiller building. It's got triple the capacity now than it had before. Thank you also to our friends over at Old Pro Roofing, say it right, Old Pro Roofing with John Williams, 817-734-2756. He'll come check your roof out if you think you have problems. And if you don't, he'll tell you. And if you do, he'll tell you. Then you'll know you're getting the honest update. And they're local home folks, not some out-of-town contractors. So they're down at the Old Town. So check them out. Also, Texas Farm Bureau, Melissa Harmon, the agent, 682-804-0534. She'll check out your insurance. She'll save you some money if she can. If she can't, she'll tell you, but normally she can, and she can upgrade your insurance. And so Texas Farm Bureau, Melissa Harmon, 682-804-0534. And our friends over at Stop. I'm sorry, you got a lot of cold stuff going on. Stop Restoration. They'll take care of your any kind of environmental hazards if you have them. And there's a big definition of what that could be. Mold, it could be unattended death, which unfortunately I just read an article this morning about they having a situation like that. Also, water and fire damage. It doesn't have to be a catastrophe, though. You have a kitchen fire. You could have like a hot water leak. You might want to check out Morris and Lisa Smith. Good people. A couple other events going on around town. Did you get the one I sent you yesterday about the Old Town meeting?
Yes, let me pull that up in a second.
All right. Today over at the Drip Bar, which is over near Mombos and the Rim, they're having a Old Town meeting, a kind of a meet and greet get together. The Drip Bar is not a bar. I thought it was, and it's a medical supply company. So they're having an event over there for the Old Town people. If you want to, you don't have to have a business in Old Town to be part of this. So there you are. Also, the Literate Schoolhouse is starting this weekend, and that's always been a big Burleson event to get school supplies to the kids who need them. And so, Jennifer would have been on here today to talk about that, so I'm talking about it on her behalf. There it is. OTBA, the Old Town Burleson Association, had a mixer at the Drip Bar. It's at 295 East Renfro, Suite 207. It's come and go. It's this afternoon. So if you hear this tomorrow on the podcast, you missed a good time. But if you hear this today, there'll be a lot of familiar people there. So 4 to 6 at the Old Town Burleson Association. Okay, let us talk about first the primaries. I'm just going to go through both sides and the third party discussions because every 4 years there's always conversation about the third party. And we've had numerous third parties in all our elections, but usually they have such a minute impact on the election that it's not what we're talking about. I teach in my government class the times that a third party actually made an impact in the election in 1968 with George Wallace, 1992 with Ross Perot, 2000 with the Green Party down in Florida, with Ralph Nader and all that business. Many of y'all probably remember that one, certainly. Third parties can have a factor in the race, but normally they don't. But we'll see. Here, I will start this off with an article that Karl Rove wrote last week. It's titled "Throw the Grumpy Old Men Out." And he put some pretty interesting data to this. I'm going to be pretty much quoting directly from him, so I won't mess up the politics or the statistics, and all this other business. But to me, it's amazing how so many people do not want this race to happen. But it just seems like, no, by golly, you're going to get it, whether you like it or not. He said that he writes that the 2024 presidential race is shaping up as a race few people really want. Amen to that, Mr. Rove. Neither the octogenarian Democratic incumbent nor the near octogenarian Republican frontrunner is popular. The June 13th Economist YouGov poll found that only 33% of voters want Donald Trump to run and 26% want President Biden to do so. Strong majorities, 56 and 59 respectively, would prefer they stay out. So we're talking about huge numbers of Americans do not want these men to run. And many of them, the majority of the respondents, don't want either one of them to run. It isn't just one-sided. Now, Economist YouGov polls to me are a bit sketchy. So he goes on, continue to quote from Mr. Rove. The pattern persists across most polling. NBC's April 18th poll found 70% believe that Mr. Biden should not run for president, and 60% think Mr. Trump shouldn't. 38% have positive views of Mr. Biden, while 48% gave him a negative rating, 38% very negative. So it isn't just, I don't like him. They really don't like him, is that 38%. Mr. Trump was at 34% positive, 53% negative, with 44% very negative. So these men are both engendering a great deal of intense emotions. And what gets to me about it is like they're almost propping each other up, because the main thing that Trump is running on is two things: I was robbed, and I deserve to be president again, and that Joe Biden doesn't deserve to be president. And what Mr. Biden is banking on is that he'll have Mr. Trump as an opponent, and therefore he'll be more electable. What's odd to me is I read these polls about electability and who's going to win the theoretical Biden-Trump matchup. And right now, according to the Real Clear Politics, I'm going to see if they have it here. Yeah, here they are. According to Real Clear Politics, the latest average has Biden up 0.2 in the national polls. And I just find that astounding, because usually incumbents have a big advantage for a lot of reasons. And Mr. Biden's out there promoting his activities with the economy, Bidenomics, as they're calling it, and all this other stuff. And he's still, in many polls, he is behind, and almost all the polls are within the margin of error. Okay. Now, as far as the Republican Party, who do they prefer percentage-wise at the national level? Right now, Trump is at 53%. So well over half of the Republican Party wants Donald Trump, which is, when you talk about primaries, guys, let me make this point very clear. The participation rate in these things is very low. And so only the most dedicated, the most interested people participate. And so when you look at primary results, you're looking at the people that take this stuff pretty seriously on both sides. And so right now, he has over half the Republican Party behind him. DeSantis is at 20.6, Pence at 6.3, Haley at 3.4, on and on and on. Now, Mr. Biden is at 64%. Robert Kennedy Jr. is 14.4, and Marianne Williamson, who, if you're not familiar with her, I'll introduce her in a minute, at 5.7. Now, all these things are saying is that if we had the election today, it'd be a toss-up, and you go back down to electoral college, and so you go state by state, and it's going to be close if this is our matchup. I also predict a low turnout, because a lot of people are going to be so I don't know what's the way of putting it. They're going to be so out of it, or so disgusted with it, they're just going to let it go. But let's talk about the Democrats first, because that's a much shorter field. First of all, you have, of course, Mr. Biden, who announced well before most people thought he should, because basically when he announced way back in April, formally, he basically cleared the field. Other people that were thinking about it, like the governor of California, Newsom, or the governor of Michigan, Whitmer, basically were told, don't bother. Here's the thing about Biden. There's nothing we don't know about him. It's kind of like Trump, certainly. And I'm going to try to say this as tactfully as I can. Joe Biden has always been a hypocrite and a blowhard all the way through his Senate and vice president days. The only man he could have beat for president was Trump. All right. Joe Biden was a joke in Washington for half a century until he became president. And what's really got to me, finally, the media is finally catching on to the fact that Joe Biden is too old. And it's just not just me saying that. It's also the Atlantic Monthly had a big article early this week from a guy named Elliot Cohen, a sympathizer, said, Mr. President, you're too old to run again. You'll be 82 during this campaign. We're about to be. His birthday is about a month after the election. It's like 3 weeks. People in the media, and I don't mean just Fox, and I don't mean just Newsmax and the usual suspects, but people in mainstream media have noticed his frailty, his difficulty in walking, his difficulty in maintaining a straight thought. The fact that he's blown up in these ballistic rages against his own staff, which was reported in several outlets, is an indication of mental decline. It's basically when, they say when people are going through mental decline, they're frustrated and angry about it, and they take it out on people. And that's what Biden's doing. He's yelling and hollering at his own staff. His trip to Britain has made some news because he just looks so frail. But the real reason I have such problems with Mr. Biden was that for years he tried to project himself as good old Grandpa Joe. This is why we had subtitled some of the part of the show is about Grandpa Joe. He was good old Joe, family man, loves his family, decent, God-fearing Catholic, and all these other things. None of that's true, and it never has been. But his absolute denial of that granddaughter of his in Arkansas, that's disgraceful, not just for a politician, for a man. His son Hunter had a child with a strip dancer from Arkansas. Everybody knows this by now. Why? Even though Hunter Biden fought tooth and nail against her paternity, a DNA test proved it. And then he fought tooth and nail to prevent her from getting any kind of child support, which the court ordered. And then he went back a couple of years later to try to get that amount reduced. This past, it was about 3 months ago. And part of the deal was that this little girl could not use Biden as her last name. And so when Joe talks about his grandchildren, he talks about his 6 grandchildren. He quotes how much he loves them. He said, it's no joke. I talk to them every day. But he has 7 grandchildren. And what really ignited all this was a Sunday column from Maureen Dowd in the New York Times. Now, Maureen Dowd, I don't know if you read her very much. I don't read her very much because I think she's pretty snarky myself, a bit snide, and I don't need that. And she generally Democrat supporting, but she blasted him. And in a New York Times column, and so did several other not typical media outlets blasted him about how he has denied and told his staff to deny that he has that 7th granddaughter. The Washington Post article comes out saying that he has sent a memo to his staff. He only has 6 grandchildren. He has denied the existence of that little girl. And you think, well, this is a family affair. It's an internal affair. And if we're talking about another family, yeah. But when you talk about Hunter Biden, who has used his father all these years to enrich himself and all the other members of the Biden family, it becomes a public matter. If this was another family, or if Joe Biden was a different kind of president, and there's, Hunter Biden, just some guy, and he's off living his own life, whatever else, and this happens, well, it's still a bad thing to deny the grandchild. But the fact is that Hunter Biden has led a very public life. He has attached himself to Joe Biden. He has enriched himself because of his father's last name. And he also has not just enriched himself, but Joe Biden's brother, James, Joe Biden's sister, Valerie, also his Hunter's first wife's daughter, on and on and on. And so the Biden family as a whole have made money off their connections. And he said, well, so did Donald Trump. Okay, absolutely. Okay, I'm not going to defend that either. The whataboutism doesn't work on me because I'm not trying to say, well, his is worse or his is better. Both stinks. And so the point I would make is that Joe Biden has always portrayed himself as being a man of ethics and family and character, and all that has been blown to flinders by this episode. It's callous, it's cold, it's hard-hearted, and it's wrong. And so if they start ranting and raving about Trump's all his many indiscretions, which I don't approve of at all, to say the least, I don't excuse, I don't overlook, there's no moral equivalence here. They're both bad. But if they try to make the case that, Joe is a better man than Trump, it's going to fall flat. And there's 2-3 articles even today that said that his denial of that grandchild is going to haunt him in 2024, because what's going to happen is that every time he's out there speaking, you can count on people waving signs. How many grandchildren do you have, Mr. Biden? It's going to come up in the debates, not in the primary debates, but in the presidential debates. It's going to come up over and over again. It's now well known. It has damaged his reputation. And for the life of me, I don't know why they just don't acknowledge this daughter. Every family goes through this stuff. Every family has these secrets and whatever else. And for him, they just made it 10 times worse by acting the way they do. Okay. Now I feel better now. I've been wanting to say that for a while because it just been infuriating me. It infuriates me when nitwits like those ladies on The View excuse it as a private matter. Everybody has that problem and all this other stuff. Yet when Trump, they basically set themselves on fire and puke and hairpins, and they're outraged and indignation. So my editorial comment today is if you're watching The View, you're wasting your time. Those ladies are not wise commentators like your old professor here. Yeah, you like that, Taylor? A little subplug. Okay. Anyway, yeah, okay. On to the other Democrats. First of all, I'm going to dispense with Marianne Williamson pretty quick. If you ever don't know who Marianne Williamson is, she's an author that writes on spirituality and cosmic forces and very new age kind of stuff. Okay, she has a big following, and Oprah Winfrey, has had her on her show numerous times. Marianne Williamson is like this guru of spirituality, not Christian necessarily. It's like whatever you want it to be kind of thing. And she did run or try to run in 2020, and it was like very new agey stuff. Well, she's back, and she's already on her third campaign manager, and we're not even to the primaries yet. So I don't know what she's there for. Sell books, raise awareness, whatever. So let's go on to Robert Kennedy. Robert Kennedy is Robert Kennedy Jr., shall I say. He's hard to pigeonhole. Because he has some very left-wing views and some very right-wing views, okay? He's like very, very big into environmentalist causes to the point where he wrote a book where he advocated that people who deny climate change should go to jail. All right? So much for the First Amendment. But he also is very, very anti-vaccine, very, very hostile, shall we say, towards social media. But but the right wing cause that he endorses most is the anti-vax, which is surprising to some. But as far as I'm sorry, I was got something popped up here. Anyway, the fact is that Robert Kennedy Jr. is Robert Kennedy's son. Of course, is going to be his big calling card. Robert Kennedy Jr. is pulling around 14 to 15% of the polls, which in a Democrat primary is noteworthy, I guess, because it's not zero against an incumbent president that the whole party is lined up in favor of. But that Kennedy name does still have some pull with some people. Now, here's the thing about it. These three will never meet in a debate. The Democrat Party's already said they're not having any primary debates. They don't think it's necessary. Well, that's wrong. It's necessary. In 2020, they had all those people, had so many people on in the Democratic Party that they had to have two different groups of them and all this other stuff. Now, as far as why they're not having debates, it's obvious. They don't want their own party to trip up Joe Biden. He's going to get on there and say something wrong, unfactual, have a senior moment, whatever, and they don't want to take that risk. They've also, the Democrat Party, to help Joe out, has rigged the format, or not just the format, the timing of the primaries to suit states that support Joe Biden. Back in 2020, he lost Iowa, he lost New Hampshire. Everybody's saying, uh-oh, what's the matter with Joe? And he wins South Carolina because of Jim Clyburn, the Democrat leader in South Carolina, put their back into it, and they got him over, and he wins a lot of the southern primaries after that, and he ends up, of course, winning the thing. But now South Carolina, in theory, is the first primary, and they're bypassing Iowa and New Hampshire altogether. And so they're trying to set up a situation where Joe Biden will be given a clear victory right from the very beginning. And they also have stacked up a lot of the primaries early in the process on the same 2 or 3 week window where it very much helps the incumbents. And so the Democrat Party is rigging the whole thing to make this primary season as short as possible for Joe Biden. So you're not going to see him out there very long making speeches and whatever else. It's going to be a very controlled environment. And in 2020, the only time he came out from that bunker in his house because of COVID, is what they're saying, is to have those two debates, which were disastrous for Trump, by the way. But anyway, the point is that they're going to try to recreate that as best you can. If you're not going to see Joe Biden in a vigorous campaign probably until after Labor Day of 2024. They're going to do everything they can to make this as low key and as less physically taxing as possible by how they conduct the primaries and who conducts them and whatever else. And that's why they're pretty mad at Robert Kennedy, because he's forcing them to actually respond. Let's talk about the Republicans. Here's a sad thing about the Republican primaries. There's some good people actually running. I mean, by my standards, I mean, people of intelligence, people of character, and whatever else. Um, it's this is I'm still getting some text here. I'm sorry, I'm reading them as I talk. Here's the thing about it is that it's interesting to me because the Republican Party has always been characterized by their opponents as misogynistic or racist or homophobic. Yet you look at half of the serious candidates, and they're either people of color or a woman who also is of color. They make a big deal about Kamala Harris. I'm sorry, about being a woman of color in her position. She's a joke. She didn't accomplish anything. She was there because of who she is, not what she's done. Or you look at the Republicans, and you have people actually have done some stuff, yet they're still being criticized as tokens, and I think that's sad, but expected. But anyway, as far as Mr. Trump, what could be said about him that hasn't already been said? It every time something happens, the media says this is it. This is the final death knell of Donald Trump's political career, on and on and on. And yet nothing happens with his support. I mean, there are people that will not leave Donald Trump. They are going to stay with him all the way through it. And it's amazing to me what Donald Trump has done to all the institutions he has touched in his life. I mentioned before, he destroyed the USFL back in the 80s because of his tactics. He's destroyed the Republican Party really as a for many people, a viable option. He This business on January 6th cannot be overlooked. His business with those documents where he's bragging about them and showing them off to Kid Rock or other celebrities can't be overlooked. That tax thing or whatever it is in New York, it's a bunch of hogwash, but this document thing's serious. Yet all these things did just bounce off him like Superman and the bullets. The people will not desert him. So when you hear, oh, this is it, they found Donald Trump on video selling the nuclear codes to Vladimir Putin, and they're laughing over some vodka about it. His supporters would say, well, hope he got a good price. Isn't he a great businessman? They would find an excuse, or they don't care. And he has, what has bothered me about Donald Trump is that I know really good people that wouldn't associate with a man of low character like Donald Trump, yet they will go and vote for him every time. And it's destroyed a lot of not relationships between Republicans and Democrats, but between Republicans. Donald Trump has polarized not just the American people, but the Republican Party itself, to where if you're not on his team, you're going to be ostracized. You're not going to be supported. You're going to lose your seat, like Liz Cheney, or you're not going to even be nominated. People ask me, do I get involved in Republican politics in Johnson County? The answer is no, because I don't support Donald Trump, and that is the ticket to get it in. Now, I don't know about the Democrat Party because I don't really deal with them as much, and I'm not going to claim that they do things better because I don't know. They may be just as bad, but I'm just saying that the price of admission to politics in this area of the country is a price I'm not willing to pay, because I don't support Donald Trump. And people say, well, look at the things he did as president. Well, you know what I would say to you? Okay, you take the Trump name out of it, and any Republican could have done those things and probably better with less antagonism. All right, yeah, he was a fairly standard Republican as president. Tax cuts and border security and all those things. Any other Republican would do the same thing without all this baggage, without porn stars and access Hollywood tapes and now, indictments and on and on. I guess my preaching for the day is to my fellow Republicans, Trump lover, Trump hater, either one, keep an open mind. Look at these other candidates. Keep an open mind. Look at these other candidates. See what they got to say. Find out their story. If you really want to know about these people, it's going to be tough because you got to dig through a little bit, but find out what they have to say. And let's look at these other candidates as well. Here we have Ron DeSantis, of course. Now, everybody knowing that DeSantis is the Trump killer, so to speak, and he's going to be the man that takes it away from Trump and all that. It's less likely now. His numbers have dropped from about the 30s to the 20s in the last 2 months. Now, why that is, there's all sorts of reasons why that is, according to the media. For one thing, DeSantis is not an inspiring speaker. Another thing, he is not one of these people that people just gravitate to. He has no magnetic charisma at all. When he was his first political stop was as a congressman from northeastern Florida, around the Jacksonville area, and he made no mark there, and he made no attachments there. And then he ran for the Senate of Florida's primary and lost to Rick Scott. And then he ran for governor, obviously, and won the first time in a narrow race, then wiped out his Democrat opponent last year. And so people thought he's a natural front runner. And people really came to look at him closely. And just the commentary about him personally is what is kind of interesting to me, because they just say he just does not have that spark they think it takes. Well, neither does Joe Biden. All Joe Biden had was his endurance and his longevity and his deep hunger for the presidency. As far as DeSantis goes, he possibly could do it. It's possible, but he knows, according to this article I'm reading. This, by the way, if you're asking where I'm getting this material, it's from the Atlantic. A guy named David Graham last week wrote this article in the Atlantic, analyzing all the candidates on bar and this stuff. Ron DeSantis is not looking like the world beater that he was 2 months ago. And they look at the Florida situation. I think some of the things he did in Florida are great. All right. I think Disney is out of its lane when if Disney wants to talk about environmental issues, or they want to talk about, economic issues. That's one thing. But they start getting into social policy and they start getting educational policy, they're out of their lane. And I don't mind DeSantis slapping them back into reality. As far as the AP African American history thing, that was a completely blown up thing, because I said then and I say it now, every AP history course worth its salt and being taught worth its salt is going to have a very strong component of African American history in it already. So there's that. But it just doesn't seem for a lot of people to have it. Then you have Nikki Haley, who was the first person to actually declare. Well, Trump was actually, he declared like 2 weeks after the election, but Nikki Haley was the first one of the others. And Nikki Haley, as you know, used to be a South Carolina governor. She was the UN ambassador. She is a parent, or rather, not the parent, a child of Indian immigrants. I like Nikki Haley. I really do. Would she make a good president? I think she'd do better than we got. Nikki Haley has some experience in governing. She has, both executive with the governor and with the national government. Is she going to win? All these are long shots against Trump. Nikki Haley, though, I think, has some value to bring to the Republican Party. Okay, has some value to. She's not hard right, but she is conservative, and she has success, and she has had a proven track record of not going off the chain when things either get tough or she gets confronted. She handles things well, and so I'd like to see her at least last. Then we have another Indian American, Vivek Ramaswamy. You don't know who this is. He's a billionaire who basically made his money in biotech, and he has all these credentials: Harvard, Yale Law, all this other stuff. Ramaswamy was involved in a lot of that high tech industry, and he's worth hundreds of millions of dollars. And he's 37, which makes him one of the youngest candidates we've ever had to be taken seriously. He's kind of like, to me, like Andrew Yang was for the Democrats 4 years ago, not because of ethnicity, but because of their backgrounds in business, and they come in and have all these new ideas, and they have very avid, if a small number, of followers. Ramaswamy has had a few people publicly endorse him, and basically he's anti-woke. He is very much opposed to what they call ESG investing, which is environmental, social, and governance investing, which means the White House wants to dictate how people and businesses invest their money based on social values as opposed to economic return and things of that nature. And so he talks about all those things. Can he win? It's not likely, but it's, again, an example of the variety that we're getting with the Republicans. Also, we have Tim Scott. Now, this is one I've said before I really like. I like Tim Scott because of his story and because of kind of quality human being he is. No, Rick Scott's a senator from Florida. Tim Scott, rather. Tim Scott is African American. He's about 58. He's unmarried, no children, no baggage, nothing like that. He was born and raised by his single mom and his grandfather, and he ends up going to college. He becomes a very successful insurance company executive and owner, and then he ran for Congress, and then he ran for Senate, where he is now. He is a genuine man of good quality. Is he good? Would he make a good president? I think so. This is the guy I'm voting for in the Republican primary, if he's still running when it comes to Texas, which is no guarantee. I like Tim Scott because of the quality of the character, and he's strong conservative ideas, but not hard right ideas. And even he has made a name for himself with many of the moderate Democrats for working with them on like criminal law reform and gun control reform and things of that nature. He's become like the Republican they go to if they want to have a serious conversation about criminal law reform and other things. You know, he and the New Jersey Senator Cory Booker, the Democrat from New Jersey, have a very strong working relationship in a bipartisan faction. That, and people said, well, that's not good. No, that's very good. It's what you want is cooperation and working together. I think he is as solid a candidate as we have. I get angry. Again, those nitwit ladies on The View basically said Tim Scott doesn't understand the Black experience. I'm like, how in the hell can you say that? I mean, has much more of an American story for many American Blacks than Barack Obama ever had, and I don't understand that at all. And then you get Obama, who, to his credit, usually was fairly nuanced and moderate in his racial views as president. He gets up there and basically calls Tim Scott an Uncle Tom. That he really doesn't understand how he's being used by the Republican Party, and that his views on race are not really legitimate. And it's like, what has happened to you, Barack? I thought you were a little bit more thoughtful than that. So the racial aspect has already started, and it's not from Republicans; it's from the Democrats. So I hope Tim Scott still has a presence in these. I think when you see him in the debates, you'll see what I'm talking about. Also, Mike Pence, another well-known candidate. Mike Pence is running on a very overtly Christian platform, which is fine, but I don't think Pence has a chance of winning because a lot of the Trumpers still hate him because he didn't bend the rules to get Trump elected, and a lot of the anti-Trumpers hate him because he was Trump's vice president and spent 4 years carrying water for him. I'm not really sure why Pence is running, to tell you the truth, because he has to know his electability is zero. Because I know people today that still despise Mike Pence on both sides of the aisle. And so I don't see how he's going to do it. Now, would he be a good president? No, he's a good man. People make fun of him because he's very observant in his Christian walk, shall we say, because, like, for example, he will not dine alone with another woman if his wife is not present or available. He doesn't drink at events unless she's there, and people make fun of that. I'm like, don't you want this kind of propriety in a president? What's the matter with you people? So, but anyway, so as a man, I think he's unqualified, not unqualified. That's a better word I'm looking for. He is, as a man, he is without disqualifications. I didn't say that right, did I, Taylor? I'm trying to say something nice about Mike Pence. I'm blowing it, but he is qualified to be president.
That's a thought that counts.
Yeah, I know, but I'm messing it up. What I'm trying to say is there's nothing in his character that disqualifies him as being presidential. That's a better way of putting it. I'm just saying that it's not going to happen. And then you got some others that people, I mentioned their names, and they're like, who? Tell me, Taylor, do you know who Francis Suarez is?
I will after you tell me who it is.
He's the mayor of Miami.
Oh,
very popular
goodness.
Mayor of Miami. He's running for president. Will he win? I don't know, but I think it's interesting. He's 45, so he obviously has national ambitions. You probably will see Suarez again in Florida politics outside after he's done being mayor of Miami, but it's highly unlikely he's going to be able to translate that to a national stage. I know Pete Buttigieg tried to do that with South Bend, but Miami's a whole lot bigger than South Bend, Indiana by a factor of 10. Plus, having Suarez an Hispanic last name, he's Hispanic, he's Cuban. Or Cuban parents, let's say, it's not going to hurt. Sometimes I think these guys run not just to be president, but to amplify their brand, so to speak, to make their name bigger. And I could see Suarez using this as a platform to be governor when DeSantis is done, or senator when either Rubio or Rick Scott move on. I could also see it as part of the resume building for vice president. Somebody, because quite often a vice presidential candidate be chosen from some of the contenders for the nomination. Anyway, Suarez is, he's interested in success stories. There's no baggage that I know of, but who knows him? And same thing with Doug Burgum. There's another one. Tell me, Doug Burgum, who is he?
He's whoever you tell me he is.
Yeah, he is fairy godfather. No, he's the governor of North Dakota, the richest man in North Dakota, by the way, and he's very conservative. But who's Doug Burgum? Who knows what's going to happen for them? Basically, his big card is about environmental overreach and trying to drill and increase oil production here and things like that. Also, you have Asa Hutchinson, who used to be the governor of Arkansas, was a senator or a congressman from Arkansas. Asa Hutchinson is running because he has such disdain and despises so much Donald Trump, and he's trying to run on a bring back character platform. Then you have Chris Christie, who is pretty well known, former governor of New Jersey, former 2016 candidate, or at least not wanted to be a nominee. And when he was defeated, he basically became Donald Trump's biggest spear carrier, and then he got kind of crosswise in a scandal in New Jersey dealing with him using his power inappropriately to hurt political enemies, and so he was not reelected. I don't think he's renominated, and so Chris Christie is running. He's now the most vocal of the Trump critics. I mean, he's always on there blasting Donald Trump. He's like a spurned boyfriend or something. I don't know. He is. Chris Christie is the most consistent critic of Donald Trump in every media event. Also, Will Hurd. Now, I like this guy. He's the last one to come in. He came in about 3 weeks ago. Let's see what date? June 22nd. Yeah, it's about 3 weeks ago. He is the former representative from District 23 down in Texas. It's the border district. He's a Republican, and it goes from right outside El Paso almost all the way down to Laredo. And it has a piece of it that goes all the way through Southwest Texas into like the southwestern part of San Antonio. And he's very thoughtful. He's biracial, right? So he again is your non-typical candidate. He having his a black parent and a white parent. I don't know which is which. He is a CIA agent. He is an Aggie graduate, so a lot of people like him. Will Hurd is a very fine man. He's a very fine man. Has a chance? Not in hell. But it doesn't matter. See, this is what I'm talking about earlier. Give these people a look in that. Don't just lock in on one, Donald Trump, and say, that's it. Look at these other people. Because the Republicans really do have some decent people running. And I'm not saying that as a partisan. Will Hurd, Tim Scott, Asa Hutchinson's, there's nothing wrong with him. Mike Pence, nothing wrong with him. Nikki Haley. These others I've mentioned, they're all character-wise qualified. See if they match what you want in a president in terms of policy. All right? And that's my thought about the two big parties. Now, but I do want to deviate to the third party because there isn't an official third. Well, there's one official third party, but it doesn't matter. But let's talk about Joe Manchin and the No Labels group. The No Labels party has not endorsed or nominated anybody for president yet. And you looked on their website. I did yesterday doing some research, and they have said very, very clearly, we may not nominate somebody. If we like who the candidates are, we may not nominate anybody. So they're basically, they build themselves on their website as an insurance policy, their words. So if Trump, particularly if Trump becomes the Republican nominee, then they're going to nominate a third party. And then Joe Manchin is the one that always comes up. Also, as a vice presidential candidate, Larry Hogan, who's a Republican from Maryland, a moderate Republican as vice president, a moderate Democrat as presidential candidate. Would No Labels make an impact? You bet it would. You don't have to win to make an impact. Now, let's say that it plays out like it, unfortunately, it looks like it is. The No Labels party said, we will meet in Dallas, by the way, mid-April, like April 14th, I believe is the date, and they will have a nominating convention just like they used to have about 70 years ago, and they'll have nominees and they'll pick just the old school way. They're not going to have primaries. They're going to do it the old-fashioned way that they used to do back in the 40s and 50s until the primaries started taking over the whole process. But anyway, No Label said that what they're doing is they're getting on ballots across the various states, and each state handles ballot access. To get on the ballot for president in Oregon, it's very, very easy. A few $100, a few hundred names, and you're on there. Same in New York, same in California, same in Florida. Texas is hard, right? It's going to take tens of thousands. I think I read about 80,000 signatures to get No Labels a spot on the ballot. And so it's going to be tough in Texas. And a lot of people don't understand this part. The presidential race is a state-by-state race. You do not have to be on every ballot to say you're running for president. Ralph Nader was not on all 50 ballots when he ran in 2000. Perot was, but he had the money to get it done. This No Labels group is trying to get on these ballots, and then if they think it's necessary, they will nominate a candidate. If they don't think it's necessary, then they won't. And you'll have just assortment of these minor third parties. But my point with Joe Manchin, and particularly if he has a moderate Republican running with him, another moderate Republican they mentioned running with him is Susan Collins of Maine. That really would be a game changer. I really do. Now, I don't think Manchin would win, but it could throw the election into the House of Representatives, and all bets are off after that. Now, there is one third party already announced, of course, Cornel West, who is this African-American philosopher and theologian and professor and just on TV all the time. He's running on the People's Party ticket. Now, again, the People's Party has to get on all the ballots, and he may or may not be there, but he's going to run for president. Can he win? Please. I think we know the answer to that. But the point is that, he'll be there. How many votes will he take? I don't know. In 2016, the Green Party and the Libertarian Party took some votes in certain states that helped Trump win. The common consensus is that any third party that runs to the left of Biden will hurt him, and to the right of Trump will hurt him. And right now, that's not really happening that much. Well, there you go. Now you got your scorecard. I hope you were taking notes. The Texas primary is 7 months away. The first event in this primary season is about a month away in August. You're going to have debates in Iowa with the Republicans, which again, Mr. Trump will not be attending. Trump has said he's not going to attend any debates. He finds it beneath him. He finds it indignant, and plus he'd probably get hammered. And so I personally think he's being a coward about it. Same with Biden. They're both being cowards. And that's what kills me about this whole thing, is that we're just heading towards this probable matchup, and there's nothing we can do about it, it seems like. And they don't have to do what we expect a candidate to do to get there, like primary debates and show up and, eat slop at the Iowa diner and kiss babies for votes and all this other junk. They're just going like, no, that's mine, and you owe it to me. And I just hate that. And I think we've seen with these two gentlemen the very complete and total lack of moral fiber between these two men. And the fact that this is what we're looking at. Again, it's sad to me. It's sad. That's why I implore y'all to look at these candidates, come to a decision based on that, and not just out of lethargy or inevitability or I don't care. I'm sounding like your old government teacher here now. You have to care, or else the Bidens and the Trumps of this system dominate. And I hope I've made my point about that. Speaking of politics, next Monday I'll have Victoria on. I'll be talking about this. We'll probably talk about local burleson stuff. Also, I have a group called Gilmore Solutions coming in. They're a new business in town, and they're a company that deals with other companies and helping them with their product lines and things of that nature. And then Crazy 8 will be on next week too. So I'm looking forward to next week. We're back in the studio. Jennifer, we're thinking of you. We hope you are comforted. I know it's just hard, and we appreciate everything you've done for us, community. And we'll see y'all again next week.